Hello, everyone. Welcome to part 2 of our literature podcast. My name is Athule, and as you can see, I'm not alone. I'm with my co-hosts Asavela and Noncedo. Today, we'll be discussing one of the drum decade short stories, which is More Passion by Ken Temba. Asavela, what do you have for us?
More Passion is a drum decade short story by Ken Temba during apartheid era, South Africa, 1953. The short story focuses on the clash between two ethnic groups, which are Letebele and Russians, reflecting how apartheid divided black communities in South Africa.
I think the story being written during the drum decade is significant to the plot and what's happening in the plot, because the 1950s was a period where most apartheid laws were implemented and the black community was severely marginalized.
Okay, we'll be delving in onto the themes that are available on the short story. The first one is space and right to the city, and race, gender, and marginality, and then power, control, and identity. So don't hesitate, grab your seat, come and listen to this impactful conversation. Maybe you might get a point or two. Okay, what do you have, guys, on these themes?
Let's start with the race, gender, and marginality. We're gonna start with the race. Apartheid divided black communities through racial separation and hostility. This started when the time black people were separated from white people. It contributed to intertribal relationship being rejected by the society. On the short story by Ken Temba, which is More Passion, we saw the couple, which is for Linga and Mapula, rejected by the society because they are coming from different group ethnicity.
Okay, what I would like to say about gender, race, and marginality, I would like to say that due to the racial separation during the apartheid times, the black people were separated and they were moved to the cities, to the townships, and then there was marginality between them, whereby those are the other groups, racial groups, ethnic groups, saw themselves as superior from other ethnic groups. For example, the Russians and the Litebeles.
Like, before we continue, in case our viewers are not familiar with the term marginality, how can we define marginalization?
Marginalization is when a certain people pushed to the edge of the society. They are treated powerless and voiceless, or they are excluded from the society.
Okay. I think my point on marginality is that the black community as a whole is marginalized, as we see that they are forced to live on the outskirts of the city, like very far from the city, on townships, but they are required to work in townships. They are severely marginalized in terms of being policed and all of these laws that are being forced onto them, and these laws are being implemented through violence, and that's how violence in the ethnic groups is instilled, as we can see in the short story.
Okay.
And I would like to also talk about the fact that there is gender marginality, whereby
Yes.
Mapula is marginalized by her, in her community as a whole, whereby she's
She's seen as someone who can't make her own decisions.
She is controlled.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because we saw Mapula is harshly judged by the society. It started the time when Thabo rushed to Alpheus to inform him that Mapula is dating Litebele. Then the community started to judge Mapula for her decision to date Litebele, which is not required from the society. We can say Ken Temba used this theme to criticize patriarchal society, which is to control someone's decisions.
And another way that gender roles are visible in the short story is how they assume that Mapula has been bewitched, rather than the fact that she has taken the decision to love someone from a different ethnic group.
And also the women that are controlled by the
as Ken Temba states, quote unquote, in the mob that was mostly women, and he says this twice to emphasize the fact that this mob is made majority of women, but the person that leads them is Alpheus, who's a man, and they wait for him and his instruction. So that's like another point on gender roles.
Gender roles. Okay.
Okay, now that we have done, I'd like to move on to the theme of space and right to the city. So, to this theme, I'd like to say that space is not in this short story. I'd like to say that space is not just a background. It is where different identities and relationships are built, and also tensions that separate people. For example, the space that brings Linga and Mapula together is the same space that separates them due to the social laws that they put that put them apart. And then when it comes to the right to the city, I would like to say that the right to the city during apartheid was determined by the fact that you have employment, you have a pass, and you have education. So the right to the city in this short story, we get to see it through Linga and Mapula having to be the ones that have access to the city, as they are working. Linga is a lawyer and Mapula is a nurse.
I would like to disagree with you. From my point of view, I feel like they do not have a right to the city, but are obligated to be in the city because of work. Because we can take this as proof that in the story, we are given all of the stops that Linga travels before he reaches Nuclear, and we are given the idea or the assumption that they live in Sophia Town. So when he starts from the city and he passes Westbury, and then he picks up Mapula at Bram, and then they go to Nuclear, all of those townships are being passed. So you see how long black people travel. It was a systematic way to make sure that their business, which is work, they keep it there in the city, and then they go back. It makes it harder for them to be in the city because they have to like commute at specific times.
Okay. On the short story, I think it was Tabo. Yeah, Tabo. At the time, he was telling Alpheus. He told Alpheus that his friend told him that Mapula and Linga used to meet at hospital. What does that means in terms of space and right to the city?
I think it means that Tabo himself, he was told by someone who had, I'd like to assume, a pass to be in the city. He himself, he did not have it.
Yeah.
So those things show that, because if he had, he would have went there for himself. But instead, he was told by someone who was in the city.
Oh.
Another point I'd like to add is that spatial planning and apartheid laws were the ones that resulted to the tensions that were there in the townships. For example, during apartheid, black people were separated due to their racial groups, and then due to their racial groups, they had a low access to the city, and then there were low job opportunities. So due to this factor, the people from different ethnic groups were fighting or were in competition for these services, and that resulted to the tensions that were available. Because, for example, maybe the ethnic groups saw themselves as superior from other ethnic groups. So that resulted to them seeing themselves as more deserving to have access to the opportunities and access to the city, because the access to the city was defined by these opportunities, which are job opportunities and education and pass laws and passes. Sorry.
Okay.
I think there was a lack of spatial planning, because we see that to the apartheid government, you have cities and suburban areas that were occupied by white people. And then you have Sophia Town, which has a mix of Chinese people and black people of different ethnic groups, as well as colored people and Indian people, and so on and so forth. And what also impacted the conflict between ethnic groups was the fact that the Russians, specifically the Russians spoken about in the story, Lesotho people that migrated from Lesotho in search of work. So when you have migrant people that are coming into a new country in search of work, they are bringing cheaper labor, which means they become the first option for employers.
Yeah.
So they employ those people. So with the very little resources that you have said before, you have a much higher competition because now you have people that are offering cheaper labor, whereas the people that were already working are already being exploited, and that I think that also contributed to conflicts because they all needed to work in order to survive, as well as the fact that there is no spatial planning because all of these areas are crowded. There's minimal housing, minimal health care, and you are putting all of these different people just because of the fact that their skin is black or the fact that they are non-white, and you expect them to coexist.
Now we are moving to the
power, control, and identity.
Okay.
What I would like to say to this theme is that power is used by Alpheus, who is an uncle to Mapula. He uses the power he has as Mapula's father is a person who holds a social status to the community. So he uses the power he has to control the mob and Mapula.
I think majority of the power in the story, as much as it is not depicted, I think it comes from the power that is asserted by the apartheid regime, where we see that they have the power to control the movement of the people in and out of the city. They have the power to enforce these laws that further marginalize people.
Okay, I would like to add, let's look on the mob. The mob itself uses the power to separate Mapula from Linga. The way that they are united and attacking Linga, who is Elitebele, they are showing their power. They are united. That they are united in order. Yeah, they are united in order to separate them. They don't allow Elitebele to date their own Russian. So they use their power to attack Linga in order to leave Mapula.
I think in terms of control, there is a quote in the short story where it says Linga arrives in Westbury, and in the train station it says they were heavily armed policemen. They were ready to keep the situation under control. And Ken Temba specifically puts the terms under control in inverted commas to actually give insight to the reader that putting this in inverted commas is symbolic of the irony of the statement, because they are, as he goes on to say, that they are ready to use any sort of violence, because no matter what you do, if they have decided to assert violence, their control is in the form of a violence. And we see that within the mob itself, the way in which Alpheus wants to control Mapula is through violence. So I think it's ironic because violence is the opposite of control. It's actually destructive.
Yeah.
To your point, that quote gave me a question, because they said that everything is under control, whereas in the township everything is not under control. Black people are killing one another. So that gave me a question, which is why are they saying that everything is under control, whereas in the townships everything is not under control?
Yeah, there is a chaos.
I think when they say under control, they are meaning the suburban areas and the city. Their job is to keep their city under control. But their control over the country itself and the economy itself and the people itself causes the chaos in the townships. I think that is another reason why the quote is put in inverted commas.
So they neglect black communities.
Yes.
Black communities are not included in this control,
even though these white supremacists are the reason or the catalyst for the chaos happening in the townships.
Remember, black people were seen as danger to the white community.
Yeah, because I want to assume this, because if they took control of black communities, this chaos of Russians and Litebele fighting each other, I think they would manage to separate them and stop the fight.
Yeah, it is true.
Okay.
I think We can move on to identity.
Yeah, I would like to say that when it comes to identity, the mob itself has a collective identity because they deem themselves as the Sotho, the Litebeles, and then they identify their identity by wearing the blankets and
Russians, sorry.
the Russians. Yes.
Yeah.
They identify their identity by wearing the blankets and everything that identifies them as the Russians.
I think that identity, we can focus on Mapula and Lenga as they do not identify simply by the ethnic groups because they are open to dating different ethnic groups, even though they know the consequences of dating outside of your ethnic group, especially between Russians and Litebele. So I think that Mapula and Linga's identity as a Sotho woman and a Xhosa man does not define their choices. But if we compare it to Alpheus, his identity as a Russian, as a Sotho man, defines his decisions and his identity.
Okay, I'm so sorry, Athule. Let me compare this situation to my community. Russians showed unity and show that they do care about their identity. They united and solved this as a community. Say mule, they are taking. There is among the mob, there is no group that is opposing their decision. In my communities, situation like these, they let the family to sort out the situation, Yeah.
Is there an example where we can link the story to what is happening anywhere in the world?
I would like to link it to what is happening in South Africa at this moment, whereby we are saying that whereby there is a conflict between between the Nigerians and the South Africans, whereby we're saying that Nigerians who do not have their is it passes?
A passport.
Their passports, yes, they should evacuate the country. I'd like to say this situation is referred to as Africaphobia, whereby we are fighting together against the black person against a black person, because now we are not fight. This fight is not referred to the white people that the.
So what you're saying is that black people are fighting amongst each other instead of fighting white supremacy, which is our biggest enemy.
It's a continental fight.
Yes, to your point, because we feel threatened by the Nigerians, because we feel as if they are like taking cheap labor, as you were saying about compared to the Russians. They are accepting cheap labor, and that results to us as those who have the right to this country have low access to the job opportunities.
Yeah, that's the major reason why these people must go. It's just because most of them, they are employed but South African people are unemployed.
Yes.
I think that the situation, we can identify it as two truths existing at once in terms of fixing the rising levels of illegal immigration. But at the same time, we also have to focus our energy on fighting white supremacy, because we cannot let what happened between Letebeles and Sothos happen between us, where they were focused on fighting each other instead of fighting the common enemy, which is white supremacy.
Oh, yeah.
With that being said, we can conclude.
I think we can conclude.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. And another example is how we get along at the University of the Free State Kotko campus, where we have Sotho people and Xhosa people getting along, which means that there is faith that some point in time, as Africans, as black people, we will get along eventually.
Yeah. Okay. And this is a lesson that we should unite and fight against the system that is oppressing us as black people.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, with that being said, we hope you enjoyed our podcast, and we hope to that you take a point with you. Thank you.
Bye.